October 31st, 1979, Halloween, was set to be just another ordinary day for Captain Charles Gilbert and his crew aboard Western Airlines Flight 605, a Douglas McDonnell DC-10 aircraft from LAX to Mexico City. The pilot in command is 53-year-old Captain Charles Gilbert, with 31,500 hours. 2,248 hours were from the McDonnell Douglas DC-10. He is capable to fly the Boeing 707, L-188, Douglas DC-6, DC-7, and the DC-10. He had landed at Mexico City countless times, with 28 landings. Captain Gilbert had been called in from reserve in order to pilot this flight. Sitting on the left is 46-year-old First Officer Ernst Streichel. Although his total flying hours are unavailable, he had 354 hours on DC-10. He is also familiar with this airport, having made 15 landings as a first officer. The third, and youngest member of the crew, is 39-year-old flight engineer Daniel Walsh. He had logged a total of 4,000 flying hours. 1,390 hours were from this particular aircraft model, the DC-10. He is also a flight instructor. He had made 6 landings at this airport. The flight attendants were Kathleen Miller, Ray Pond, Regina Tovar, Sharon Smith, Larry Roundtree, Teresa Haley, Donald Chip Richards, and Eduardo Eddie Valenciana. Deadheading on the flight were flight attendants Vicki Lynn Gita and John Stockwell. The flight attendants were all based in Los Angeles. For one female flight attendant, it was her first flight out of training. The aircraft involved was a wide-body McDonnell Douglas DC-10, registered N903WA, nicknamed the Night Owl. It was painted with Western Airlines' DC-10 spaceship livery. With the spaceship layout, the aircraft had 46 first-class seats and 193 coach seats. The aircraft first flew in 1973, and in 6 years, logged a total of 24,614 flight hours. There were 75 passengers and 13 crew on board, for a total of 88 souls. The October 31, 1979 flight left Los Angeles International Airport at approximately 1:40 a.m. local time, and was scheduled to land well before sunrise in Mexico City. The airport was quite dark, as twilight had only started 5 minutes before the crash, and there was ground fog obscuring the runway, which was limiting visibility to about 2 miles. As Flight 605 approached Mexico City International Airport, air traffic controllers cleared it for an instrument approach using the ILS of runway 23L, with an expected landing runway of 23R, with runway 23L closed for maintenance since October 19. Air traffic controllers expected our flight to perform what is known as a sidestep maneuver to the open runway 23R. This meant that the flight was to follow the instrument landing system's glide path toward runway 23L, and, as soon as they sighted runway 23R through the cockpit window, they would reorient their aircraft to land on it instead. Weather conditions continued to deteriorate during our flight's instrument approach. A 5 a.m. weather report indicated visibility of 2 to 3 nautical miles depending on direction. By 6 a.m. shortly after the accident, visibility was described as 0. Our flight was on short final to the closed runway at 5:42 a.m. Cockpit voice recording audio of the last seconds of the flight indicated that the first officer and captain agreed that they were cleared for 23R, not the runway they were still on approach to. The captain further stated that they were in fact still on the approach to 23L. The crew decided to abort the landing at this point. The flight's first officer began to describe the ILS approach's missed approach procedure, a climb to 8,500 feet, in a non-urgent, perfunctory manner. Before any go-around power was added, the flight touched down hard on the unpaved left shoulder of runway 23L, with more than 2 g of force. At 130 knots of speed, approximately 3 seconds after the touchdown, and in a 10 to 11 degree nose-up attitude, the right main gear collided with a dump truck loaded with 10 tons of earth. Most of the right main gear separated from the aircraft and struck the right horizontal stabilizer. The impact of the landing gear shattered the truck, fatally injuring its driver, and creating a debris field 400 meters by 100 meters in area. The damaged aircraft, still airborne with takeoff thrust engaged, began to bank to the right. The bank angle increased until the flap of the right wing struck the cab of an excavator 1,500 meters from the runway threshold. The aircraft's bank angle continued to increase, to the point that the right wing began to cut into the ground and taxiways nearby the closed runway. The end of the right wing eventually struck the corner of an aircraft repair hangar, causing damage to the hangar and also fracturing the DC-10's right wing. It then impacted an Eastern Airlines service building north of both runways. 26 seconds after it initially touched down, this final impact caused the structural breakup of the aircraft, heavily damaged the two-story reinforced concrete building, and caused a fire that consumed most of the aircraft structure. One part of the DC-10's left wing traveled well off airport grounds, impacting a residential building on Matamoros Street in the Pay de los Barras Colonia, and causing a fire there as well. Most survivors of our flight were found in a 20-foot-long section of fuselage that did not burn. Survivors reported that large pieces of the building continued to fall onto the wreckage of the aircraft several minutes after the crash, as rescuers arrived on the scene. The following is the audio, from the cockpit, of the last seconds of Western Airlines Flight to 605. Discretion is strongly advised.
We're cleared on the right. We're cleared on the right. Is that right? No, this is approaching the goddamn left. Yeah, it's 500. No, yeah. Oh, Charlie, get up! Oh, Jesus Christ! Get out!
The day of the accident, the status of the 88 persons aboard was reported as follows: 63 bodies recovered, 8 missing and assumed dead, 3 passengers in intensive care at American British Cowdray Hospital, 9 passengers in satisfactory condition at American British Cowdray Hospital, 5 passengers already released from other hospitals after first aid treatment. 1 more passenger died of his injuries in hospital on November 8, bringing the total fatality count of passengers and crew on board the flight to 72. Of the 16 surviving passengers of the flight, 14 were injured. The count of ground injuries and fatalities were variably reported. Ground fatalities were reported from 1. The driver of the truck parked on runway 23L, to as many as 3. The driver of the truck and 2 people in the Eastern Airlines building, the DC-10 crashed into. As many as 30 people in all were injured, including those on the ground, airport ground personnel and local residents, injured by flying debris. As our flight crashed on Mexican soil, the accident investigation was carried out primarily by the Direction General of Civil Aeronautics, DGAC. Details of its findings are published in ICAO Circular 173N, 109. The probable cause of the accident was determined to be noncompliance with the meteorological minima for the approach procedure, as cleared. Failure to comply with the aircraft's operating procedures during the approach phase, and landing on a runway closed to traffic. Thank you for helping to keep the memories of all those who lost their life, either on board Western Airline Flight to 605, or those who perished on the ground, alive. I will link the Find a Grave online memorial to Flight to 605 in the description below.